Electrocast.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now, this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you.
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris, and I am here with my older brother.
Wesley. I don't know, that was supposed to be like refined.
Refined?
Yeah, like first class gentleman.
Or like that faux British American thing that people did at like turn of the century.
Yeah, I can't decide if it was old money or new money.
And today we're talking a movie, oh man, the culmination of James Cameron month. The moment that I have been waiting for, because we're talking
Iris's favorite movie of all time. That's right.
Titanic.
No surprises here. We know what Iris's rating is going to be.
Yeah, I'll just say right out the top, it's a totally from you and a good from me.
All right. So as we always do with the big movies, the favorites, the ones we know we're just going to like gush over, I'm definitely doing the trivia for this one.
Okay.
I'm going to do off-topic ones. Okay. What is Titanic's official MPAA rating?
PG-13.
Man, that is correct. And boy, I'm going to argue this is the hardest PG-13 rating in all of cinema history.
Really? Why? Because all the bodies being flung off a ship?
1,000 people died. Most of them on screen.
I mean, there was no blood and gore.
There was
no murder.
Tommy's blood ran across the deck right before the crew member who inadvertently shot him, then shot himself and tumbled into the water.
That's true, Mr. Murdoch.
Most of those deaths were on screen. Multiple dead kids, tons of swearing, considerable nudity, sex, suicide, murder. Titanic, PG-13. Now, why is this? Is it because they were swept away with the romance and the glory of it? It has been preserved by the National Film Registry as being aesthetically or culturally significant. And were people just so carried away? They were like, yeah, it's got all that stuff, but we were blinded by love in Titanic.
I think they just wrote it all off as natural disaster.
I guess.
Those were part and parcel of an act of God.
Man.
And therefore natural.
Cora, Jack's best girl, died. We have to assume. Never saw her.
We don't. And there's that floating body in the grand staircase. That's pretty eerie and sad and morbid.
More morbid than the lady holding the baby?
Oh, the frozen lady with the baby?
What happened to Cal's baby?
Took too long.
He got his baby to get him through onto the lifeboat, and then he was like, "He'll swamp us," and he's like standing aboard the thing, like punching people with the oar. Like, what happened to that baby?
Yeah.
And Rose is like, "It's getting quiet." Yeah, because all the kids are dead. Oh man. Okay, this one I'm going to disagree with. Who speaks the first and last lines of the movie?
Brock Lovett.
Man.
The famous Bill Paxton, rest in peace.
Do you want to hear this story or not, Mr. Lovett? I'm going to disagree, though, because I think even after he says, "Never let it in his Bill Paxton way, then Gloria Stewart goes up to the railing and goes, "Ah!" as she throws the heart of the ocean into the sea.
I don't know if that counts.
A dialogue
it's kind of more like a
Gloria
squeak.
Stewart.
It's like
So it still makes me mad. A quarter of a century later, I'm like, that necklace had no emotional connection to you or Jack. It didn't benefit your family in any way. Why wouldn't you give it to him? Why wouldn't you split the profits with him?
Well, let's talk about this. I mean, yes, it would have been nice to have found the diamond and to reap those rewards, but his coming to terms and her getting rid of it was the symbolic action of stating once and for all that it was never about the diamond.
Yeah, love makes you do dumb things.
Now, don't get me wrong. It makes me mad. Like, it's very, very impractical. There are so many other uses for that, but I can get behind Old Rose's personal decision to do with as she will with her personal property.
Okay. How did Titanic predict the future of 20th Century Fox, its production company, being acquired by Disney?
How did it predict it?
Yep. I'm confident the production of this movie involved time travel. You give up? Okay. It's a movie.
Yeah, you stumped
right?
me.
And how do you get into a movie?
You buy a ticket?
Yeah. How did Jack and Fabrizio get their tickets for Titanic?
Through a lucky hand of poker?
One from Olaf and Sven. In another movie about freezing stuff. Okay. How many times did I see Titanic in theaters?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to guess less than me because I saw it 7, maybe 8 times. 5?
Very close. 6 times.
All right.
Kate
Good
Winslet
job, Wes.
has admitted over the years in interview that she is no fan of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. Every time this movie ended, I would position myself to be able to leave the theater before the actual song started, the lyrics started.
Oh, the credits song.
Yep. But yes, the answer is 6.
Man.
And 7 if you include the 3D re-release on the 100th anniversary, April 2022, in which we are recording this episode, being, of course, the 110th anniversary to the month of the sinking of Titanic.
110 years to the month. Incredible.
And again, this movie, a quarter of a century old already in itself. 10 years past its re-release even. Titanic is old.
I was struck in watching this movie critically at how young Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet are, not only as actors, right, but they're kids. Like, I was like, they behave like kids. They look like kids, which is crazy to me because when I saw this in 1997, I was a kid. I was younger than them, or I guess I was technically their characters' ages, even if the actors themselves were a little older. And I thought they were so old and so mature and off on their great grand adult adventure. And now I look at them as kids and it's a trip.
Very strange. I'm going to argue that they look both exactly appropriate as Rose and Jack as they do in their current iteration because we've seen them so much. He does look young, but he also looks just like Leonardo DiCaprio. Like he looks young, but he doesn't look wrong, except when she cuts him loose after he's, chained down there and then they get through the gate.
I know exactly
right?
the moment you're talking about.
When he climbs the stairs in that puffy shirt and he looks
that's all stuck to his little scrawny body.
awfully scrawny.
He looks particularly like wet cat pathetic in that moment.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that. That's so funny you bring it up.
He went into a seclusion for a year after this movie, couldn't handle the attention. And then when he came back, really his first movie back after Titanic was The Beach. And he had gotten considerably harder looking and kind of yoked. And he always tried to beef up to escape this little good looking little boy image.
Well, I think technically the next film was Man in the Iron Mask, but that was probably filmed around the same time or even before Titanic.
Yeah, it was just kind of his emergence. Also, he was all covered up in that one, and he was definitely not covered up in The Beach.
That was Danny Boyle?
And Alex Garland.
And Alex Garland penned the script, right?
Yeah, but he's become a filmmaker in his own right, and they did multiple films together as well.
I mean, a great departure for Leonardo DiCaprio after Titanic. I mean, yes, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, they just shot to superstardom, right? And that's a lot for 21, 22-year-olds.
Yep.
A lot.
And remain great friends. Would you agree? Because they've been voted multiple times as the couple with the most chemistry in movie history.
I don't know about that. I think they've got great chemistry.
I mean, they do both look back on their performances now, apparently, and kind of laugh about it. They don't think they did a very good job. Kate Winslet said her American accent was pretty bad, and Leonardo DiCaprio was like, I was a young punk in that movie. They're both kind of embarrassed by it. They
both had bad accents in this movie. But I excused her bad, quote, American accent because in that time, I think in high society, it was fashionable to have like a faux European accent. Now, it's a complete other story with Leonardo DiCaprio's like, I lit on out of there and never looked back. It's like, you reckon, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, that just does not sound right coming out of LA native Leonardo DiCaprio's mouth.
Yeah, that kind of live by my wits, ma'am kind of vibe.
Yeah, just kind of unnatural. But I think their chemistry is great. I think it's great. I wouldn't say it's the best. They get pretty raunchy in Revolutionary Road, their reunion film. I guess they have a different kind of chemistry there.
Yeah, kind of gross.
Whereas here it's all Romeo and Juliet, like hot but innocent.
Yeah, literally the pitch, Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic.
I mean, makes sense, right?
Absolutely. No, these are classic stories that I'm sure, there was much hesitation because this is before James Cameron could defy expectations. Did Terminator 2 go a little bit over budget? Maybe, but nothing like Titanic. Do you remember hearing about the troubled production of Titanic at the time?
Kind of. I wasn't really I wasn't tracking, but it was big news. I think there was like a weekly column in one of the trades that was like chronicling the debacle that was Titanic.
I think at one point Entertainment Weekly did a series of projections for movies to be released and how it was going. And their rating scale was like ship shape or sinking fast or whatever. And it had a little graphic of a boat either afloat or half sinking or totally underwater. And then they applied that exact rating system to Titanic. And it was on its way down because, the production was ballooning from 135 to 200 million, all this crazy stuff. They said, with its considerable runtime, it's already been delayed from summer to Christmas. There's no way this movie can survive and recoup its budget. They anticipated $100 million loss on Titanic.
Wow.
Man.
Well, proved them all wrong.
Right?
Yeah, I think that if all the craziness was on my radar, then it was forgotten the moment I entered into that theater because I was primed and ready, the ideal target audience for Titanic, completely wrapped up and obsessed with this film.
Yep. We talked about the influential age. And you were not only 17, give or take, right? But the same age as the Rose character.
Correct.
When in fact Kate Winslet was 21. Legend has it they were freezing, they were miserable, they were in one of the water tanks, and she was like, "It's my 21st birthday today." And Leonardo DiCaprio was like, "I don't care."
Didn't she almost drown?
They never really felt like in real danger because it was heavily controlled and there were safety divers, and of course they were in a tank. But she did say that someone would have to pay her an awful lot of money before she would work with James Cameron again.
Well, I guess they're doing that. I guess she's getting paid.
You know why? Because James Cameron has an awful lot of money to get her into Avatar 2.
Can't wait to see it. I want it to bonk me over the head with goodness.
Yeah. Available now or whatevermovies.com. So Titanic, the movie, budgeted at 135, came in over $200 million in budget. What was the actual building cost of the Titanic in 1997 dollars?
This not the set, the actual ship from the 1900s.
The actual Titanic in all its glory, the ship, built in 1912, began building in 1912, $150 million.
What?
The movie Titanic cost more than it did to build the Titanic.
Adjusted for inflation, $150 million?
Yep.
That's insane. Bruce Ismay, man. As much as he's villainized in this, what a visionary.
I mean, look. It was chaos. And in retrospect, sure, you could feel some guilt and stuff. Did women and children die? Absolutely. But at that time, they were loading passengers, and the guy was like, "Hey, anybody else?" And Bruce just hopped in there. And
would you have done it?
Absolutely.
Without shame?
Well, I mean, no, I would. He couldn't look at the wreckage. The real life Bruce Ismay couldn't look. And in the movie, he averted his eyes. But when it comes down to it, if there's a spot on the boat, that captain, that guard guy should have jumped in as well. Because look, the movie was well lit and you could see people running around and screaming and everything, and things were chaos, and there's a boat on the other side letting men on, but still at the time it must have been utter chaos. And once those lights go out, you're in pitch blackness. Nobody to steer the ship, pun intended. You do what you got to do. I said that in our review of Titanic, I would reveal my survival scenario because I definitely would have survived. Lifeboat or no lifeboat.
What would you have done?
this is going to be controversial, but it's still going to be PG-13.
Hard PG-13?
Yeah, exactly. It's Titanic level PG-13. So you go into the water one way or another. And what they did was correct. You tie the boats together. You transfer as many people into that existing raft of boats as possible. And then you go back and get as many people as you can, right? That should have been first and foremost. Once the boat goes down, little Jack in steerage knows that now that, the ship's going to suck them down, and they had to avoid the suction. But now that that's gone, they're going to be coming back for us. And they didn't for hours. And she's all like, Josephine, my flying machine. And everybody's dying. And they're chilling over there like 20 feet away. So what you do is you get everybody together and you quell the hysteria. By getting everybody together, you all hang on to each other's life vests and you create a floating raft of people. And then you use that body heat and insulation to stay warm, periodically shifting people from the inside of the circle to the outside of the circle. Would it have worked? I don't know. Would less people have died? Maybe. But it certainly would have calmed everyone down. There would have been a sense of community, of safety, of solidarity, or whatever. And failing that, going down, you make your own luck, right? And he's got his money. Hockney's got his money, and the other guy has his pistol. So you grab carving knives from the kitchen. And all those bodies in the water that aren't quite frozen yet, you cut those people open like a tauntaun in Star Wars, and you climb inside the carcass. I mean, he did it in The Revenant, spoiler. Why couldn't Jack have done that in Titanic? You just make yourself a suit of people, and you insulate yourself until help comes.
Wow. So not only is the floating island of survivors on top of a floating island of dead bodies, but now you're suggesting that you desecrate the dead bodies and use them as coats?
That's correct.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
That's gruesome.
I mean, there are stories about the Titanic. Remember the guy where they're at the stern of the ship or whatever it is that goes down? Jack, this is where we first met. The guy in the life jacket who pulls out that flask.
Uh-huh.
He was the head baker who legendarily got so hammered that he stayed calm throughout the sinking of the Titanic and survived because he wasn't flailing around or freaking out and was pulled out, and the only thing he suffered was swollen feet.
Whoa, the head baker was one of 6 people retrieved from the water?
Yeah, actually it turned out to be about 40 people, but yes.
Whoa, that head baker and the blonde-haired chick.
Aw, Fabrizio's little girlfriend from steerage.
Was that her?
Yeah.
The one hanging off the...
Yeah, he said, is it okay if I put my hand here? And they went dancing away and stuff.
That was her.
Yeah, and it all comes around like that.
Man, yeah, it really does. And they had that moment of connection, which always felt so palpable to me. And now I understand all of these wonderful James Cameron-esque details that really bring life and dimensionality to a scene, right? Like, they're in it together, but they're also on their own. And Rose is kind of looking out from the safety of Jack's care and trusting him implicitly, right? That's kind of their deal. He's the street smart, fast thinking, action oriented guy. And so she has this moment to look out from under that cover and see these other people who are, oh my gosh.
I'm wrapping up my questions.
Go.
So, is this the highest grossing movie of all time?
Well, it was.
It was.
For its time and for a long time.
Until Avatar came along, also directed by James Cameron. Talking about pulling off a miracle. I mean, you never doubt James Cameron because he's going to go away for like a dozen years and come back and just kick your butt with new stuff, right? He beat the success of the highest grossing movie of all time, Titanic, with Avatar, and held that record until it was beaten by Avengers Endgame. But Titanic still holds the distinction of being the highest grossing movie of all time that actually won Best Picture. That's not a question. I didn't phrase it right.
Oh, interesting. It's the highest grossing Best Picture winner.
Correct.
Of all time. Interesting.
How about that?
Because Avatar, bested by The Hurt Locker, did not win Best Picture. Endgame, not even nominated.
I mean, they're okay. They're fine. And of course, Disney owns all of that.
Yeah, not lost on me. And I think if you take the overall industry that Titanic spawned, its whole own like cottage industry, Titanic the musical and the interactive museum exhibit, documentaries like
The
Back
Breakfast
to the
Cereal.
Titanic, Ghosts of the Abyss, like it's like what Karate Kid did to martial arts in the 80s. Like Titanic did for like deep sea exploration.
Yeah, cultural phenomenon worldwide. And it built into a fascination that people had already had about Titanic. I mean, to this day, we're still shooting TV sizzles for it and stuff. I think this is one, it's a little bit disaster heavy, but it has arguably as much death and destruction as Lord of the Rings, which apparently is a perennial favorite for a lot of people around the holidays. It requires an investment of emotion.
It's kind of like two movies, and I'm perfectly fine with just watching the Jack and Rose story or just watching the disaster part.
Oh, man.
Because they fulfill two different kinds of emotional experiences for me.
I mean, I agree. And I was going to bring that up. This decided shift in tone. I can't remember what the catalyst is.
When they're kissing on the deck and they hit the iceberg. I mean, Titanic supposes that Jack and Rose cause
They did.
the ship to hit the iceberg.
Literally did. They're watching them mac down below, and he totally misses his cue. Smell ice, can you? Bleeding Christ. And then that dude is all he not only causes the impact with the iceberg, he not only causes Titanic to sink, but causes the deaths of multiple survivors in the water. Because Molly Brown's all like, "It's your men out there." And he's like, "There's going to be one more if you don't shut that hole in your face."
Whoa, you're making really crazy connections here. The Watchman was the mean guy on Unsinkable
Yeah.
Molly Brown's ship?
All of these are not just James Cameron, hey, we're keeping it all together here, but based on historical fact. That guy did survive, and yeah, a lot of the lines are accurate. If we've learned anything about James Cameron, is that his painstaking attention to detail doesn't go overlooked when it comes to the vastly complex execution of movies like Titanic and Avatar. But Avatar was more of a CG heavy effects spectacle. And Titanic isn't as flashy, but boy, Titanic just feels so much bigger. I mean, he's really pummeling these people with thousands of gallons of water. They destroyed that entire staircase set when they dumped all the water into it for the sinking scene. They demolished because they could only do it one time. There's hundreds of people on screen at once screaming and running around, and that makes it palpable and terrifying. Like, they had to do all kinds of strategic blocking so that people would be in the right place at the right time in these massive crowd scenes, not just on the boat just before it sinks, but in the course of the sinking, and everybody going into the water. Just so much careful planning.
It feels so real.
A little bit dated now, 25 years on. There's CG shots that are questionable.
Sure. I cringe every time she does the toe, when she's like on point with the toe thing at the real party. It's just kind of silly. Even the end, when she's in heaven and she reunites with Jack. I'm like, oh, but wow, that's really cheesy.
Look, I'm going to venture to say she's not in hell, but she's underwater with the ghosts. And I think that her heart, when it departs her body, when she's dead at the end in the bed, presumably, was in the heart of the ocean. Rose is the heart of the ocean, and she throws her soul down, casts her soul down to be with the dead spirits aboard Titanic still. Because Jack sank, and he's waiting for her at the top of the staircase underwater.
Wow. Morbid or beautiful?
Yeah, I
or
think
both?
it's exactly. Kind of hell. So she's definitely dead, right?
Well, that's the theory. You're going to die an old lady warm in her bed.
After riding on the beach on horses right in the surf.
Exactly.
Having lots of babies, presumably.
She's going to ride the roller coaster until she throws up.
But there's definitely some awkward stuff. I cringe when they do all the period stuff. Like, what's the artist's name? Something Picasso? It'll amount to nothing. I guarantee it. And it's like, ugh. And the Freud stuff and how prescient Rose
Passenger? What's he, a passenger?
Oh, man. It's a little bit awkward.
Like, he doesn't have to choose, like, the most famous artist of all time.
Of course it's difficult. We're women.
delivered by the amazing Frances Fisher,
Yes.
who I thought was James Cameron's wife until I realized it was actually Susie Amos.
Yep. It's just because she looks a little bit more age appropriate.
Maybe. Did they meet on Titanic?
Yep. They met on Titanic, and he was respectful and gentlemanly and didn't ask her out until after that movie was over.
Okay.
Because he was still married to Linda Hamilton, who was doing Dante's Peak.
Ooh.
Even though they were supposedly estranged at that point. So we got Susie Amos and James Cameron. We got lifelong friendship between Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. But Frances Fisher, this was her second and final Best Picture of the 90s.
And the other being one of your favorites of all time.
Yeah.
What was her name? Like Bumbleberry or something?
Strawberry Alice.
In Unforgiven, available now on orwhatevermovies.com.
But strangely more likable.
Yeah, she's a different kind of warden in Titanic.
So Jack got arrested twice, both times orchestrated by who?
The manservant, the undertaker of a manservant.
You've seen this movie dozens of times. He was one of the sharpest, cleverest, most determined and focused characters. He was like the James Cameron of this movie. And that would be Lovejoy. And he's completely forgotten about. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that dude when I rewatched the movie. And he's instrumental to the plot, has a full arc, you know, is calculating and shrewd and everything. He even gets his death scene. We see his demise and stuff. I mean, at least presumably, the ship splits right under him.
That's right. Yep. And you see it in his face, the disbelief, the shock. Yeah, Lovejoy, very instrumental. I'd say probably on par with Mr. Andrews and Mr. Murdoch.
And James Cameron he sees these things through. I think Titanic is a masterclass of deliberate pacing, through lines, cohesion, execution, special effects, all that stuff. It's just, it works so well. We even have the establishing shot of the car that they bone in being lifted onto the ship at the beginning of the movie.
Yep, the car is planted and paid off. I think that car, wasn't all that stuff shot in reverse? So that car had like a reversed license plate and all that junk?
Because they wanted to show it being loaded correctly from the correct side onto which Titanic was loaded and stuff. I wasn't exactly sure why they weren't able to pull that off the other way, if it wasn't a mistake or something, but whatever the case, however they did it, yes, they reversed all the signage down to buttons and stuff on people's clothing to represent it as it was accurately on screen.
I mean, what a great set piece. The reveal of Titanic and the boarding and the introduction of all the characters and all the props and culminating with Rose's reveal from under the hat. So good.
So well put together. We talked about scale in the other movies, Avatar in particular, which of course came way after Titanic. But the whole ship felt grand, expansive. It of course was a set, but it wasn't really a set. It was built to like 19th, 20 scale. It was almost the same size as Titanic. So they were really on board that ship, on board the sets. Everything feels massive to me. I was wrong when I said in the Abyss, man, they hit Ed Harris with that water coming down the hallway. They totally did that with Leonardo. They washed him away. They hammered those people in the ship. There was one scene that was a miniature that looked fake to me, and that was when the doors get blown open. And so that was a miniature shot, and that's the one that I was thinking of. But yeah, no punches pulled on Titanic. The scale was incredible. I love the fact that he built the steam room. There were like so many of those pistons or turny things, and they did the same effect that they did in Aliens, where they put a mirror behind it, so it makes it look like many more of those things are firing at the same time, even though it was a mirror image. They made the guys, they were all like 5 feet tall to make the engine room look much bigger than it was, the set.
That's hilarious.
I love the attention to detail. It's so meticulous. And even he talks about the things that weren't exactly correct. He admitted that later findings revealed that's not how the computer simulation that Bodine goes through, that's not how the Titanic actually sank.
We didn't talk about Bodine. I'm glad that you brought him up. Also makes an appearance in Ghost of the Abyss. Do you know he's an actual, like, seafaring guy or whatever?
He's James Cameron's technical buddy. And he was like, hey, can you be in my movie and play basically yourself? And he's like, all right, if you want me to mess up your movie, I'll do it.
When he talks about the Geraldo incident, what is he talking about?
So Geraldo, back in the 80s, some workmen or construction workers uncovered a vault door, and they determined that this gigantic vault belonged to Al Capone. So Geraldo went around talking to everybody who would listen about how it was going to be this on-air spectacle. Untold riches in Al Capone's forgotten vault or abandoned vault. Dead bodies, maybe. That might be where he kept his victims. And they had a huge live special, and he opened it on air, and there was nothing inside. And Bodine was right. His career never recovered. Yep.
No.
And I'm sure that Brock Lovett, with his nice little story, went back to shore in shame. All I'm saying is Rose was kind of a punk and could have thrown him a bone because he took her down memory lane. But he could have given him the heart of the ocean. She got to have her little story and die and revisit Jack and stuff.
But she does in the alternate ending.
What?
She gives it to him in the alternate ending.
I do not. I've never seen this.
Really?
Yep.
There's a whole other ending that he shot.
Okay.
And they went with the heart is not important ending.
It wasn't.
But it's strangely not satisfying the other way.
I'm reminded of this single shot. It happens 3 times where they send up flares, the first distress flare, right? Titanic is going down and we're still in the scale of the ship. We're still in the ship. The ship is the whole world. And then the second flare they send up is a wider shot, like a mid-wide shot of the ship, the whole ship. And you can see it's obviously sinking and you're like, oh man. But boy, when they send that third flare up, when it's like over Jack's face, and you're out in the middle of, like, it gives me chills. That huge ocean liner with thousands of people aboard where it's their whole world for about a week is completely alone in the middle of the Atlantic with no other light to be seen anywhere. It's terrifying.
The first time, it's like kind of wondrous. You get that little girl's face and she's like, fireworks.
Right. Oh.
And then the second time, it happens right above Jack's head, and it's the light bulb. It's the literal light bulb that goes off in Rose, where she decides, I'm not going to leave him. It like frames him like a halo, and she like jumps for Edek or whatever from the lifeboat, from the safety of the lifeboat. And then that last one, so powerful on so many levels. I'm just gushing.
And that's what we're doing. There's no possible way to cover this movie. This was a grand experience as a moviegoer in 1997, where you and I, there was no video on demand. Had to wait agonizingly for the DVD to come out on little tiny TVs and stuff. Not even the DVD at the time. It was a double VHS release and a laser disc if you were rich, where you still had to change the disc.
Do you think anybody has not seen Titanic?
Yes. Jason Quinn has never seen Titanic, celebrity chef Jason Quinn. And he said it was because he was a kid at the time, being only about 35 now, and hearing all these girls gush about Titanic and how excited they were. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that.
Gabe Dupin, my friend from high school, had a theory that he was going to be the savior of the world because he hadn't seen Titanic. And he was convinced there was some kind of like frequency or something programmed into the film so that once you've seen it, you're like converted into, a drone or something like that. And I, in my wiles and my manipulation, made him watching Titanic my stipulation for agreeing to go with him to prom.
Man. And see, you turned him to the dark side. He could have been the savior of the world, and you debased him by making him see Titanic.
Gabe Dupin, I'm sorry.
He would have been missing out. It was a wonderful cinematic experience, one of the most important of my young life, actually being around 21 at the time. And that's saying a lot because it is bigger and crazier and more rounded than Terminator 2, which was a defining moment in my life. It is the Best Picture Academy Award winner and the first Best Picture Academy Award winner to be produced, directed, written, and edited by the same dude. And that dude is James Cameron. And there's a reason we saved Titanic for last.
Thank you for subscribing to our podcast. I'm going to die happy and warm and old in my bed. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wanna Bet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like airplane.
I know you do, but WannaBet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast.
Are you passionate about saving the planet for future generations? Do you want to learn how to do it? If yes, then you need to tune in to the Nature Back podcast. It's a talk show covering the changing world around us, from renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, circular economy, to ESG and social innovation. Don't miss this opportunity to discover how you can join the movement and make a difference. Subscribe to the Nature Back podcast today on your favorite platform and get ready to be amazed.
Electricast.